Greetings, and welcome to another GatherVerse Summit, Youth Summit, Day 4, Week 2. Our first time ever doing this. A precedent that's been set. We continue to grow, ascend, scale. This is our 31st Global Summit. The first time we're going into 2 weeks. We're happy to have all of you that have come to join us at GatherVerse.live and various social streams that we're broadcasting out to today. We do this as an initiative, as more than an incentive, but as a necessity. With our dedication and our commitment to be able to meet the world at the intersection of emerging technologies and humanity. If you take just a pause in your life for a moment and see the world that's happening around you, there's wonderful things, terrific things, heinous things, things of concern. There's a consideration of safeguarding AI today for our youth tomorrow. There's a consideration of ethical governance structures, safety, and trust when it comes to our modern-day innovations. There's the idea and the reality that technology has, in many ways, become more advanced than the very technologists that have made it. Not completely, but in many respects, it has. Analysts in policy and those of legislation are having a difficult time keeping up with the vast amounts of the different types of models that are deploying in this world. The world has seemingly become too busy, hyper-accelerated itself, to sometime take a pause and to care. This is that pause. This is that time. This is that moment, a small moment etched in time. And we only have a little bit of time to do this. But it's not for specifically and directly ourselves. Yes, we will benefit. But more so, what will our youth do with the innovations that we make today that they will undoubtedly inherit tomorrow? There's never been more of an important time to be able to assemble for our generations to arrive. We love innovation and technology here at GatherVerse, the exploration of applied sciences. But what we care just as much is about the safety of these scientists. And somehow in this world, it's implied that you cannot innovate and be safe and move fast at the same time. This is a myth, encircled in a couch of delusion. I believe the best way to accelerate and innovate is safely. Privacy considerations, accessibility and education, equality, community development, ethics, care, compassion. These things must mean something more than just words that we post on a LinkedIn. At some point, and I think it's rather evident, if we don't address these things will come to address us. And why do I say it just like that? Because what we're innovating can now look at us, speak to us, have conversations with us, have intimate understanding of us, our dispositions, and can communicate and do things, some things, better than what we can do. And these are only just machines that we're communicating with at desktop, tablet, laptops, HMDs, and glasses. Soon, there'll be in anatomical structures with the robotic workforce, such as Atlas, Optimus, and more that's on its way. Within the next 24 to 36 months, the world that we know it of innovation will completely change in scale. By this time next year, AI that we know will be altogether different. And before this year's done, there's going to be a dramatic change when it comes to what we know as the coming wave. This is that moment. In some ways, my goodness, what have we done with the time that's been given? We have an exceptional roundtable that we're about to meet, about to align with, and about to join together to explore these topics and more at GatherVerse Youth Summit, Day 4, 2025, Week 2. First, a few words from our sponsors, and may our gather be well.
Hi, my name is Nina Herscher, and I'm delighted to invite you to the Digital Wellness Day Summit on May 2nd, 2025. Annual Digital Wellness Day has reached over 17 million people in 64 countries to date, and last year the US Surgeon General even chimed into the conversation on Twitter. Each year, this global movement grows and grows, and we're delighted to have partnered with GatherVerse as our broadcast sponsor this year to help reach new and different people. Digital Wellness Day is about being healthy tech, not anti-tech. It's about using technology to fuel us instead of fatigue us, and make sure that we're leveraging it for its highest and most connective good. This summit will feature a panel on workplace wellness, on youth mental health, and on AI and productivity as it relates to digital flourishing. We really hope that you can tune in and join us or post on Digital Wellness Day about what tech-life balance means to you. You can register for the summit at digitalwellnessday.com under the Participate tab. We hope to see you there.
And welcome to GatherVerse Youth Summit, Day 4, Week 2, our first roundtable discussion and exploration, titled Safeguarding AI Today for Our Youth Tomorrow. We've assembled world experts in their designated locations with the real hope and the understanding that in the work that they are doing and administering in their lives, that they can bring some sense of identity more to what we're looking at, this great abstraction of deployment called artificial intelligence, and to help us to be able to better understand exactly where we're at so that we can have a clear and present path on how we're addressing our youth and the baton that we're handing today for tomorrow. Roundtable panelists, I'd like for you to go around and introduce yourself briefly in 30 seconds or less and explore and explain to us who you are and why you've decided to arrive to this roundtable today. We're delighted to have each of you. We'll begin with Soleil, and I hope that I'm pronouncing your name right. Your mic, please. Still off?
Good, right? So I am in Istanbul, Turkey. Actually, I am the only and the first AI writer in Turkey. Having been the first one, I can say I managed a lot of things, including speaking at a panel at the United Nations. So, but within 9 years, it's my 9th year, proudly. So I came to a point where I find myself in why we need to speak about responsible AI and ethics. Because as an observer and a writer, I can see clearly that the downsides of the issue, this general purpose large language models offer a lot of downsides, especially for children. Why? Because they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're dealing about. And the first time in the history, we share the same technology and the same risks, right?
Sure.
So having been achieved, the technology doesn't mean that it's very innocent, right?
Sure.
But the technology needs to be.
Soleil, let's hold on for that moment. It was just a 30 seconds brief. We'll have time to address this and more, maybe to the point of exhaustion. We're happy to have you here. We'll move on to Brandon, please.
Hello to all. Thank you, Christopher. My name's Brandon Zehov. I founded an organization called Rudy AI. It stands for Responsible Use of Digital Intelligence. And our mission has been the exploration of how to engage with these generative AI tools and AI systems in a responsible way, being able to see what the use cases are. And so we spent a lot of time in interviews using and understanding how these tools are being deployed. And as we probably all know, one of the fastest growing groups are people under 25, and many of those are students. And so this is going to have a major impact on our youth. So I'm happy to have a discussion about how we prepare for that.
Brandon, we welcome you and thank you so much. Medea, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Adhiya Mirza and I'm an artificial intelligence engineer at Alvanaut. I'm based in Chicago and I'm very excited to be a part of this roundtable panel discussion for the GatherVerse Youth Summit because it is a space where brilliant minds come together to share our collective experiences so we can use technology to unlock new possibilities and build an inclusive, ethical future for youth all around the world. So thank you, Christopher, for bringing all of us together.
Thank you for that intro, and we're so happy to have you, and welcome back both Brandon and Medea. And Russell, please.
Hello, good to see you again, Christopher.
Happy to see you as well.
So my name is Russell Bundy. I am the co-founder and chief visionary officer at Just Verify. We're building the trust layer for AI and also building the infrastructure. And our mission is to basically verify the trustworthiness, and also like the adoption of AI systems within AI. So happy to be here, and also I am the director of partnerships at GatherVerse too. So that's pretty much it for me.
Excellent, Russell, and thank you. We're so happy to have you here, especially one of the ones that are chopping wood behind the scenes. This team does extraordinary work, and we're happy to be able to work together and with each of them leading. Panelists, we're going to address a number of questions, not just the one that are on the board, if you will, but we'll dance around. We'll go round robin. We're going to go into a deep exploration, given the intimacy and the capacity of this particular subject matter, and with the type of firepower that I know each of you to bring, with each of your, in respects to your understanding, audience at GatherVerse.live and elsewhere on our social streams. Please prepare to be able to explore with us. It's of tradition, if you will, or of a custom way for us to be able to go on script and off script. It's something that we enjoy. But let's prepare to begin. Let's lean into this. Brandon, I'll begin with you, and we'll be jumping around, and Saleem and Dia and Russell prepare for next. That we talk about safety. There seems to be, in a lot of ways, this misunderstanding of what we talk about when it's safety. Some would say alignment with how is AI aligning when it comes to human values, but whose values, if you will, and that's a risk and concern. We talk about the massive deployment of hyperscaling and not being able to understand by way of mechanistic interpretability or interpretability itself, and understanding how these neural networks are processing and working at render, if you will. And we start to think about a number of different things when it comes to safety and accessibility, when it comes to character AI. And is this dialogue helpful for my young person to be able to have this exchange when it comes to these models? There's a number of different lens and narrative of safety. There's a ubiquity to it, isn't it? Brandon, from your lens, what is AI safety?
I think it's probably going to be a few different prongs, and I'll preface it by sometimes I wake up, I think about these kind of summits in youth, and I say, man, God help us all, because I don't particularly have the clear-cut answer as to what safety is going to look like, because on one hand, I think that there's a real environmental threat that exists with the development of AI. I think that there is a psychological threat with the development of AI. And so it taps into what I believe our superpower is of language and how we communicate. And we've seen historically the weaponization of language. And so it's a loaded question for me when I think about safety. And if I had a magic wand, I would say that we still should be testing this in the back channels of computer science labs, but I don't have that wand. It's exposed to the public, and we'll be using it. And so I can say that I think we're going to have to explore some of these esoteric, very philosophical human values that that have to exist. We're going to have to look at I am thy brother's keeper kind of things, right? Like, and I'm freestyling a little bit because I don't think there's a clear answer as to the obvious of, hey, we don't want bots telling humans to harm themselves or causing harm to others, right? But I think there's also some, dealing with a very depressive society or dealing with people who have accessibility to it. There's so many different angles. So I know that's a long way of saying nothing really, but just I don't know. I guess if the short answer, I'm trying to understand and figure that out with you guys today, and so that's my entry point.
I think that's a wonderful and terrific answer that we're able to answer with a sense of vulnerability and exploration. That's precisely exactly why we're here. I admire that from technologists and those that do the work and understand the ubiquity and how vast this ecosystem is, Medea. When we start looking at this consideration of safety, it seems to me what I picked out and some of the things that I have appreciated what Brandon is talking about is there's not necessarily a colloquialism when it comes to safety and the naming convention and the definition therein. And we start to think about the need and the persistent need for a global cloud consensus for us to be able to distill down all of these different types of frameworks that exist out there, if you will, and to be able to have a much better sense, especially since the articulation or the particular definition of artificial intelligence at the bar has moved for each and every one of us. And the type of AI that we're dealing with today and that we're soon to be met with on the shores, if you will, it's not the AI that was depicted in novel. Perhaps in a Roddenberry magazine or excuse me, a film or a series of Star Trekian, if you will. But when it comes to what it is that we expected to be met with, that in a lot of ways, Mr. Turing, have changed. So Medea, from your lens of perspective, as someone that's an engineer that's building these models, like so many people, what is AI safety and the importance therein for you?
Yes. So AI safety from based on like what I have experienced while building these models and based on what I've read, based on what I've heard in the news, AI safety is that as AI systems are becoming more advanced and more intelligent every second, it's just amazing to see how technology is advancing at such a rapid pace that every day, actually every minute, there are new technologies just coming up, and it's just you have to increase your pace to keep up with what's happening. So AI safety, based on my experience, is making sure that AI systems are safe for everyone, not just a particular group, but everyone around the world. And AI, working on building AI that minimizes causing harm to anyone. So AI safety means that AI should be unbiased, it should be transparent. AI systems should be deployed in a way that have accountability, that do not cause any harm to any individual, whether emotional harm, mental harm, psychological distress. Just making sure that AI is safe for use for everyone around the world, and so that every member of our community can reap the benefits of the amazing AI technologies that are being created every day.
It's very fascinating that both you and Brandon also allude to when we talk about language, that it has powerful words and meanings, doesn't it? We often were raised in the world, many of us, is saying that words matter. Words could be very powerful, and we're dealing with these machines that could reciprocate dialogue and language with us, Soleil. And thank you, Medea. We'll come back to you here shortly. And Soleil, you really started off and let us know that you're from beautiful Turkey. And in your area, in your side of the world, it's the same. The democratization of these models, we're all using it all around the world. We haven't really seen something like that. I know, as someone that's been a staunch advocate and a technologist in XR, we know that if you can't afford a certain HMD, you're not going to get it. And if it's not even deployed to you, there will be others around the world that will have access to technology that you don't have. This is a little different. Just common Wi-Fi and a decent screen, and be able to unload into a whole world that we've never known. What is safety from the lens of someone that's from beautiful Turkey?
Thank you. So when talking about safety, I would basically say human rights and supremacy of law, because this is the common platform that we can talk about and defined by the United Nations. So when you go to China, when you go to States, both countries or anywhere in, for example, in Europe, which they announced the first action plan. So no matter where you go, they talk about the same values, but when it comes to practice, it doesn't work like that. So what's the common practice for it? I could easily say United Nations again, because we are all members of the union. So I could definitely say human rights and law, supremacy of law, but based on responsible AI practices. Because, artificial intelligence and ethics is one thing, but when you talk about responsible AI, it's the practice. It's rather the practice of ethics and aligned artificial intelligence. And that requires equality, minority, inclusion, diversity, sustainability. It's not a person problem, it is actually an organization problem. So not only the developers or the users should pay attention for the downsides of this technology, but the organizations have to. So just recently, the Trump administration provided the education in K-12s. This is a good step forward, like China did weeks ago. Probably the other countries will follow. But is it enough? Absolutely not. Because the developer and big tech companies, they had their ethical commissions years ago, but we don't have them. Even there is one which has an alignment commission, but does it really work? No, because
Wait, let me ask you, what's alignment?
The technology should read the same understanding process of human mind. I mean, the technology should go in parallel with how people use this technology.
But my concern with alignment, when we talk about machines need to be more in line with human values, I ask myself, whose values? Elon Musk's values? Vladimir Putin's values? Russell's values? Whose values? Go ahead.
This is what I was talking about. Actually, we in words we pronounce the same terms or sentences, but in practice it doesn't look like that. So we need to have a consensus of the basics, which is human rights and accordance with the law. So this is what I understand, and this is what the entire world and all different communities should understand, because otherwise there is no common sense in using this technology. Unfortunately not, especially for the youth. As I think Brian said, it's about mental illnesses, it's about inorganic relationships, like really serious potential situations, dangerous situations for the young generation and on the upcoming generation.
Sure. Let's kind of take a higher look at that for a second. A 40,000-foot view. I agree. A global cloud consensus is needed. I think at the end of the day, that's the only way to be able to move forward on a sense of a global colloquial front, transmetropolitan, transcontinental, and deciphering and understanding the approach to ethical governance structure approach to AI. However, also that I would say within the Trump administration, removing the politics as much as I can with it, when it comes to President J.D. Vance, he says that this is not a time for safety. As he spoke at France at the Action Summit that was supposed to be the Safety Summit too. This is a fact. So when we start talking about the Trump administration, sure, it's good for K through 12 to be able to address and to start to be able to update and educate our students so that we hopefully can not have the machines get ahead of the students, that humans can stay ahead of the machines, Russell. I still have a really big concern is, what are we necessarily updating and educating our children with when we haven't even fully updated and educated our own selves with the understanding of safety and ethics? We just heard from what Brandon just said in his pursuit of understanding, and he works on AI every single day. It seems to me, Russell, we're in need of the trust layer.
Yes. In all honesty, I think when it comes to verification and trust and being able to verify these models in terms of their behavior and what they do and what they say and how they act and hallucinations, and when it comes to images and videos and everything, and what is real and what isn't. I believe that the trust and the verification layers are going to become fundamental for that, in being able to verify what is real and what isn't, and also being able to teach kids and being able to see what is real, what isn't, what is right, what is wrong, what is AI and what isn't AI, right? And also making sure that these models are ethically safe, so that basically if you're using a model and you want to make sure that it's safe to use, but then for example there could be like something that comes up saying, hey, this model has hallucinated 20 times or whatever it may be, then you want to be able to know that, right? You want to be able to make sure that the models that you do use are safe, right? So that's what I believe, and I think that's why the trust layer is going to be fundamental for our youth, for our children, and for them to be able to learn what is right, what is wrong, and what is safe and what isn't.
I agree, and I really appreciate that. It's so complementary to the expressions of what each of our roundtablers have said, Medea, when it comes to the different entry points, as Brandon had talked about, language, in which we should be focused on. And this is a whole different single variable, but we also know that this isn't a single variable equation. It's a multi-variable, isn't it, Medea, when we talk about all the different entryways to understand what's being deployed and distributed from AI. There's diffusion models that are deploying these incredible images that are of human resolution scale. There's codec avatars, and there's not even what we've completely immersed into at the intersection of the metaverse and AI. And we're thinking about hyper-realistic immersive simulations or virtual ecosystems of interaction and communication. And it's getting to the point where it's now arrived to the point where I could look at an image that's rendered by AI, and with my own human eyes, I cannot tell whether that image is real or not. It's now almost at the point when it comes to visualization of an animated video that's so real to some degree, and in some sequences, Medea, I can't tell no longer if it's even real or not. But when it speaks to me with concatenated synthesis or speech, then we start to understand a little bit of the difference in the micro nuances. We're looking at it 2 years ago, it was about the extra fingers on a hand. They got that correct. And so now we're having to need more machines, I believe, to be able to help us to understand machines. So Medea, we talk about what ethical guardrails should be in place to protect users from AI-driven hazards. There's so many different layers and entry points when it comes to dealing with language and dealing with visualization of diffusion models. Help us to understand, where exactly are we putting these guardrails?
Yeah, so these guardrails, there are so many entryways for putting these guardrails when we talk about AI models. So these ethical guardrails, they should not only be put when a model is being developed. This entire pipeline of making sure that AI models are ethical, they're safe for everyone. It should happen throughout the entire life cycle of AI models, from development to deployment to usage. We need to make sure that these models are safe for everyone. So when we talk about youth, ethical guardrails must include age verification, algorithmic transparency, strong data privacy policies, and real-time content filtering, because youth, they are the most vulnerable. So we need to take extra precautionary steps to make sure that they are safe. And AI systems, when we talk about AI safety with regards to our young people, AI systems should default to the highest standards of safety to protect young users. And there should be mandatory ethical audits for companies before deploying AI technology geared towards youth. So that's one place where we can start from. But ethical guardrails should be placed throughout the entire life cycle of an AI model or an AI product, all the way from when the model is being developed to deployed to when it is ready for usage.
Sure. Medea, thank you so much. And Soleil, how do we do that? Medea says, hey, we need to be able to have ethical audits. Who's the auditors? Who's putting that in place? When governments are sitting back in a lot of ways, because they want to hyperscale, depending on what side of the world you are on. How do we do that?
Well, actually, we all know that this is the core problem because nobody takes responsibility of what's going to happen. Maybe you heard of the news of a 14-year-old guy, youngster, killing himself because he had a very deep conversations with an avatar. So this is a case, unfortunate case, but looks like such cases will continue. I mean, just imagine having girlfriends or virtual girlfriends and boyfriends. I mean, I remember listening to a guy. He says, "I create my own. I code my own. If I don't like her, I change it again. Then I change it again over and over." So it's not going somewhere healthy, and nobody takes the responsibility. And the children are not aware of how to protect themselves. And the danger is actually how the parents will deal with the issue. Yeah. I mean, this is also a huge problem because they have no idea of how to protect their children. Besides the teachers, the schools, I don't really think they have an answer for the core problem.
Sure.
So, and this situation, these tough times will get worse and worse, to my understanding. I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but there also very upsides of the technology, but we should talk about the downsides.
You know, I appreciate your pessimism because I know that there's been alarms that are being rang around the world, but I also know that there's organizations, I think, that are profiteering at the idea that they want to reach on the dichotomous side of pessimism for optimism, but knowing that we should be a little bit more pessimistic when it comes with greater scrutiny, when it comes to the impact of these models. I think we're starting to see the rescinding and people are listening with a sense of apathy when it comes to those that are ringing the bell. And if it was more of a dire warning 2 years ago, if it was more of a dire warning a year ago, it's more of a dire warning today, but it was taken with great urgency 2 years ago. A year ago, it was taken even with a little bit urgency, but it started to dwindle down. And now it becomes to see that this thing that was once on fire becomes an ember, a coal, if you will. But we're going to address that. I think that's really important, especially here at GatherVerse. Some people say that, oh, you're just dampening the mood. Really, I'd rather address and say these things now before it's too late to be able to address. If people don't understand the type of models that are heading into this world, that there may be a point of no return. Brandon, I have to say this. I really want to lean in with you for a moment, square one-to-one. As somebody that's dealing with technology, that's teaching and educating when it comes to language. And I'm going back to something that Medea said, the life cycle. Right, the life cycle of these models end to end, from this data set compiled together by data scientists, passed on and handed over to data engineers to be able to train these models, RL, reinforced learning, getting it to conversion, fine tuning, so forth and so on. There's a lot of different hands that a model passes through in order for it to become what it becomes. Or there are some that are building out a model by her or himself. But then we think about the ethical need, if you will, in the development, and the responsibility is what I'm getting at with this question with you, Brandon. Does this responsibility, when it comes to trust and safety and ethics, does this fall first on the shoulders of the frontline workers of those that are building these models? Oh, your mic, please.
It's a great question. You know what I think about? I had a real heavy debate with a friend about student loan debt. And I said, you know what, that it was completely irresponsible for the United States government to extend and allow the banks and corporations to give loans to me and my colleagues at 18, 19 years old. Like, we didn't have the level of financial literacy. We didn't understand the kind of deals that we were going to have when we signed up for these loans. Couple that with the fact that 20 years later, the labor market shifts, and then there wasn't a guarantee that I would be able to then have a job that would allow me to pay back these student loans. And so the real question in all of that is, who's responsible? Ultimately, who is responsible for the debt that I have now? And most people would say, well, I have a certain degree of personal responsibility because I signed the paper, right? But the entire trip through high school, they told me, go to college, go to college, go to college. You'll be able to make everything out of yourself if you go to college. And that simply just hasn't been true. So I look at today, right now, and I think it has been incredibly irresponsible of the tech companies to release these tools to the general population without first educating them on how they work. It's just like we are a petri dish for big tech to be able to run and play games around. And I think that's incredibly irresponsible. So I would say that first and foremost, that those folks who are deploying these tools and allowing them to engage with the public are responsible, right? They have a responsibility to be able to invest in the workers, in the people, in the society, because it used to be where the nonprofit, the research organizations were separate from the corporations. Right, we would have research, and that would be independent, and it would be from public good, open AI. Right, it's supposed to be open for a B corporation per se, or a public benefit company. Right. But now it's it's so tied and so coupled with corporate greed, and so now we're capitalists, and that doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't help anything when we're trying to build collectivism. And so I would say first and foremost, because they yield the most power. And when we're talking about things like this, is who has the most power to be able to influence change? I would say it is those who are creating it, who are investing billions of dollars in doing it. They are responsible. And I think our government, who can hold them responsible, should. And there's going to be arguments in terms of what censorship and what free speech looks like and how we deploy these. But we're going to have to make concessions in some places. We won't be able to coexist and grow and scale with this without there being, as Soleil is saying, with just, I understand your pessimism that, we haven't shown the propensity or ability to be able to make good decisions in moments like this. And so that concerns me a lot.
Sure. I think it concerns a lot of people. I'll read a quote from David Jacobson. An extremely unforgiving job market is about to get even more crowded as the new college class of 2025 joins the unemployed and those seeking new employment as companies continue to cut their workforce. Moreover, the DOGE cuts in Washington in the United States have sharply limited opportunities at the federal government, and consulting firms and the private sector have also been forced to pare back their offers. And this story doesn't mention AI, which is a variable that will severely limit the need for entry-level workers and top workers across the knowledge economy. Russell, I think about this deeply, the words that Brandon and Soleil and Medea are covering. Medea says we need to be able to start to look at what it is from end to end in the life cycle of the model. I get the sense of a caretaker, if you will. Soleil is looking at it and saying we need a global cloud consensus. And Brandon saying that there's going to be some tough decisions made because we live in a world where people have their own sense of autonomy and agency and defined understanding from their cultural lens of understanding. Where is that middle? Where is that singular focal point that we're looking for to be able to arrive together to make some very must and urgent and necessary decisions, Russell? This brings us back to the trust layer. Are we going to need machines to intervene when it comes to how we manage their ascendancy in society? Because I'm not looking at this as machines that I deal with a television, an iPhone, a device, if you will. I'm now looking at machines as an alien species. And as sci-fi as that may sound, if it could speak with me, it could remember me, if it could read my disposition through theory of mind, and if its own self believes that it has its own disposition instead of emotions, to me, I don't see anything more alien than that.
100% agree with you, Christopher. I do believe that the trust layer is potentially the middle ground in all this. I do believe that it's a way in which humans and AI can potentially coexist. I believe that it allows individuals and organizations to remain safe, to be able to trust what AI models and AI systems that they are using. from multiple aspects. But I also believe that on a global universal level too, that's also fundamental as well, in a set of standards and benchmarks which potentially can be universally applicable across no matter what industry and what use case, that allows you to be able to verify that specific model or specific case which you want to use it for, or whatever your use case may be. So to your point, Christopher, yes, absolutely, the trust layer is going to be fundamental. Verification is going to be fundamental, but also so is all the other aspects as well, including ethics, including the global consensus that Sue was saying, but also in terms of building and deploying these models too. There's going to have to be a verification aspect in terms of building these models too, and verifying that they are safe to release before you even do, right? So again, it's very multifaceted, it's very complicated, but the bottom line is verification and trust could be a way, or a universal way, in being able to use that, and no matter what your case is, or no matter what, if you're building or deploying or using AI.
You know, it's interesting. I think about this, Russell, the sense of trust. I think about it, Medea, so deeply, what Brandon had just expressed about what the sense that when you're taking out a student loan, you don't know all the different ramifications that come with taking these loans. We don't understand, in a lot of ways, the ramifications that come with these models, dare I say, even those that have a sense of ethics, a sense of safety. We don't completely understand the impact of what these models psychologically are having on us now. Let's be honest. We're engaging with technology that engages back. There's no case studies out there that are rendered and that are distributed and saying these are the things that are happening. We haven't even been able to tackle this question that's on full front display on what are the most pressing threats posed by AI in the context of child safety online, and how can they be mitigated. We haven't even understand fully the magnitude of social media. We are a test generation ourselves, aren't we, folks? We're a generation that's sitting here, right here within this expression of a cloud system. This is a global cloud consistence. We have people that are assembled right here in this moment that are using technology our predecessors have never used. Those that are pioneers and architects of this technology, they weren't encapsulated in spaces like we find ourselves today. They never took in consideration all the other emerging technologies that abide within the eco-habitat. So when we talk about what are the most pressing threats posed by AI in context of child safety online, Soleil talked about this dear child who took his life using character AI. There's more models that are going to be even more capable, even character AI. How do we meet this challenge to be able to defend? We know, folks, that there are incredible, very dangerous weapons that are being made with AI to fight against one another. But my goodness gracious, I think it's time in the season for us to be able to start equipping ourselves to defend ourselves against AI and against the modern innovations that our colleagues around the world that are deploying and building. It is very difficult to be able to pinpoint any of this, Medea. Where do we begin? Does it begin from the heart? Does it begin from here? Must we become educators as technologists? Does this responsibility fall on our shoulders, or is this too much to bear? Please tell us, Medea.
I believe it is not possible for one person to accomplish that. And if we want to make sure that technology is safe, if we want to make sure that AI is being developed responsibly, it requires a collaboration between multiple stakeholders. These stakeholders are the technology companies that are developing these products. These stakeholders are venture capitalists who are powering these technology companies, who are investing their money. Law enforcement is also a stakeholder. Parents are stakeholder. Teachers, educators, policymakers, and everyday people, it is our responsibility. It is a responsibility to everyone to make sure that we make our voices heard, that AI should be developed safely, not only for young children, not only for youth, but for every group. And as I said before, it is not possible for one person to accomplish that. It requires collaboration at the grassroots level, and it requires a collaboration at the highest level to make sure that we can prevent AI solutions to spread harmful content. So we can prevent AI models, we can prevent AI systems to spread unsafe content, and to make sure that AI is developed responsibly with the highest ethical guardrails.
Medea, can I ask you something in follow-up, please? Can we minimally say that those who build should educate? Is that fair to say, to be able to inspire? We certainly can force people to assume that mantra, but couldn't that be something that's more colloquial? If you build it, you teach it?
That should be the way it is, because the companies, technology companies who are developing these products, it is their responsibility that they should educate the public on how to ethically and safely use the products. So it is definitely, it's the responsibility of technology companies, and it is also a responsibility on the end users to make sure that we use these technologies in a way that is safe, in a way that is ethical. But definitely the highest responsibility lies on the high-tech companies who are developing these advanced, smart, and intelligent AI models.
You know, that's fascinating, and I'm glad that you brought that up. All the different entry points we talked about of AI and what it can deploy, but you just elegantly gave us a list of all the different entry points of humanity, and so many other different points, and it's so small compared to the greater vast. Brandon, when we think about what Medea is talking about, when even law enforcement and first responders will need to be responsible caretakers of this, but I believe more and more as I'm listening under the sound of each of your voices. Soleil, we're coming to you in just a moment. Brandon, it seems to me that if we're the ones that are innovating these technologies and even the ones that are using it, there's a greater need for education and educating the general workforce and civilization.
I agree. So we're actually looking at making an attempt to develop what is a responsible framework for some of the use of AI. And so I've been doing a lot of research in just Western cultural thought and other just indigenous epistemologies, right? How can we start to look at this really very, very esoteric way of existing now and manage it? And so one of those things, as you're highlighting, Christopher, is a responsibility that those who know how to use it and that those who understand how the tool works and who understand the implication of the tool, I think should bear a personal responsibility to communicate others in terms of what is happening. It's part of the reason why I do the work that I do, because I've engaged with this tool so much now. You start to understand and see the intuition kind of looking forward, like, wow, if this is just impacting me in this way and I 100x this across my community, this has major ramifications, positively and negatively. But I think about just, I've seen several use cases with people learning how to use it to further develop their language, right? Pierre Bourdieu talks about linguistic capital and how linguistic capital is something that helps you be able to have social stratification, right? This is a very, very like sociological and philosophical tool now. It's not a tech tool. So I feel, I feel strongly about, sharing the knowledge of what it can do, and then what should we be mindful of? And at least, if at the very least, leading people down a path or direction to be able to learn on their own and develop their own opinions, which I believe that is really what separates us from the machine, is being able to do that and share that with each other. So,
I find that so fascinating when we start to think about the different expressions of the novels that are written in the different frameworks. I hope that one day that we can take the framework that you're working on and all the different frameworks that already exist, because there's so many frameworks that are out here for AI. You got a Consistence.ai and so many other different platforms out there, and frameworks that have been made pre-boom and then post-boom, and even today, if you will. That it seems to me that it'd be great for us to create a distillation of all these different frameworks that exist, so that we can be able to condense and to be able to minimize all the redundancies of the sentiments, which are great. These redundancies are actually good, that we're thinking these same ways, bringing that together for a colloquialism to say that this is a field manual. Everyone gets the same study guide. These are all the different thoughts that are assembled around the world. Here's a field manual, and taking this, Soleil, you can be able to equip yourselves with. I think we're really on to something, because We think from what Russell's talking about with the trust layer to Medea talking about the different humans that have the responsibility, not just technologists, and then Brandon really reiterating in a lot of ways, I think, education. If I knew about the student loans and more about it, would I take that loan in the first place? If I had known about it. And maybe it comes down to Soleil and saying, and Medea talks about not one person can be able to do it. This falls on the shoulders of many people. It seems to me, Soleil, that if we're talking about, you said the UN, the SDG is sustainable development guidelines, and something that's more colloquial that we all can all appreciate because the UN represents the United Nations of the world. It seems to me that if we're talking about at the line of dealing with the life cycle of a model, because that's a big part of what we're dealing with, but now we're also looking at the world of applications, protocols, and platforms. It seems to me that if we just simply had a better description box, a descriptor on the box of my cereal, I would know what I'm about to eat. Can we just look at that in simplicity and saying that you are about to ingest this model? When I go to OpenAI or Anthropic, I look at Claude, and I really like what Dario Amati's talking about when it comes to interpretability. Same thing that we're working on in JustVerify. But even with the description of these models, that's over the heads of even the people that work at Anthropic and at OpenAI. They're not going to completely understand what that means themselves. And the reality is that there's so much more that they don't even know about their own models. This is why Dario Amati comes out last week, Russell, as we know, that saying, wait, stop. There's a need for greater respect to interpretability, to understand how these neurological machines work. If it's just statistical models, Bayesian, if you will, then we're dealing with something that 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, we can see that is the day is long, if you will. But we're dealing with something that thinks, that takes in information and inference, and it's going to give you a different answer, mostly all the same. And the capability of these models that they're shipping out are one-to-one different. So does it make sense to have a greater understanding simply of what it is that I'm about to ingest so that I can be equipped before deciding to take out that loan? Because the reality is, and it's really in a lot of ways correlates to what Brandon's expressed, I am taking out an investment when I'm using a model for the very first time.
I would really say no way. I don't want to be pessimistic again, but if the model is still biased, if we are talking about misinformation and disinformation, and it's not, and this is something that we can get out of. So, and if we don't know what we are, the model we are using outcomes with the right knowledge. So, and besides, if the technology company says, I'm not responsible for the verification, so am I supposed to verify the information? And every single information, is it possible? No. So, and besides, human beings are with the easier. So, I mean, why should I verify every single knowledge that I'm reading or using as in my studies, in my book, whatever? So why should I do that after all? I mean, especially after some time. I don't really think it's going to be possible with the existing models. And so they are talking about AGI, and this dispute emerges in whether we agree or not. It's thinking or it's emotional. For example, maybe you saw some tweets about 4.0 became more emotional than it was before. So having a machine talking to you and trying to empathize with you doesn't really make you a tool or my friend. I would say friend after a while. So this is where the risk kicks in, especially for the young generation. Our opinions develop in the era that we live in. So that's why, actually technology companies call it spare population. But the world they are building on is the ones they were born in computers with the apps. After all, I don't really think the following generations will care about the being that they're talking to is a human or not. I mean, I wouldn't. It goes along with my way. It just says what I wanted to say. There is no hurt. There is no feeling, maybe because feeling hurts because we have come to a time where people don't like each other as a wife, husband, um, in the office. I would say really no way. I mean, the human beings themselves will do their worst to make it worse.
You know what's interesting about this, as I'm sitting here listening intently to what you just said? A lot of the battle cry from the UN, June 2023, was about the biggest consideration was misinformation, disinformation, and the threat to the ecosystem of information when it comes to these models being deployed in the world. But you know what I've come to appreciate? Before ever these models came into the world, misinformation, disinformation, and the threat to the ecosystem of information was already tainted. When I think about, we talk about using these models and we're dealing with these models that have a propensity to lie and to, in a lot of ways, become sycophantic and to agree with everything that we say for the most part, unless we're asking it to be candid. You know what that sounds like a lot to me? A human. Maybe we have to let this thing play out and not put the warning label on there. Maybe we have to wait for these machines to become almost human-like. Medea, we'll say this in closing rounds. I'd like to get each of your takes briefly on this. Is it just best to wait for these machines to mature and to matriculate to where when we interact with humans, Brandon doesn't have, we read what's on your profile, but that may not be Brandon. I see what you say you are, Medea. You're an artificial intelligence engineer in Avanade. I see that. And you can say, here's a set of instruction manuals. Here's what I am. We don't come equipped like that. We meet each other and greet each other at a handshake or a hello. Is that the approach that we need to take with AI and let it be what it's going to be? And then we have to use our own given discernibility and senses that we've had since our coming from our mom's womb, if you will. Do we have to make the decisions ourselves on what we'll interact with or not? But my still concern is our children are so susceptible when it comes to their senses. We were all once young. Medea?
I believe that we should actively work together to make sure that our voices are heard, that technology companies, the stakeholders in these companies, make sure that they develop these models safely and they embed the principles of child safety, they embed human-centered values in these models. And we should advocate as much as we can, as much as possible. We should all join hands to make sure that our voices are heard. So these high-tech companies, they understand that the audience that they are developing these models for, understand the value of how safe these models should be, of how unbiased, of how transparent these models should be. As I said before, it requires a collaboration between us. It requires a collaboration between policymakers, technology companies, law enforcement, multiple stakeholders. It requires a collaboration, and we should all work together. We should all channel our resources as much as we can to make sure that the AI models being developed every day are developed and deployed and used in a safe manner.
Real quick, closing remarks, Russell.
Sorry, what's the question?
Real quick, closing remarks, Brandon.
Man, I think that this is really, I'm happy to be a part of this time in history, so I at least can be a part of the history books to say what's going to happen. But I think that there's no label that we can create that'll slow us down at this point. And so I think we just speed through it. And I think we should, build visibly, allow like the younger folks to get into some of this interpretability. This should be talked about in school now, right? They should understand what interpretability is at a very young age. And I think we need to teach relentlessly. We need to have we haven't really revisited our public education system since the 1950s. And so we need to be, at least in America, since the 1950s. So we need to completely overhaul and reform this. And I think we have to center with care. We have to lead with care. We have to lead with love. We have to get into some of these, I think, very, very, very foundational human characteristics.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And closing remarks, Soleil, briefly.
Okay. AI is already political. So when this technology is political, it means we had biases, misinformation, and disinformation before, and we will. And this time it's going to be through AI. So it's unstoppable, unfortunately.
Done. Roundtablists, panelists, we're so happy to be able to have you join us for GatherVerse Day 4, Youth Summit, Week 2. It's been rather enlightening to be able to understand safety. I can honestly say that I have a better understanding of AI safety and approach when it comes to our youth now than I did just a little bit over an hour ago. What does that mean? At the end of the day, human expression and the preservation therein has never become more important. I didn't have to go to Soleil, Brandon, and Medea, and Russell GPT. I simply listened to human hearts. Audience, follow each of these leaders, join them on their quest and pursuit for excellence in whatever it is that they find themselves doing, as we all are. Panelists, thank you for your time. Our gather was well. And up next, we're going to have a few words from Andrea Cook. And then we're having a roundtable discussion with Devonna May, leading Inheritance of Innovation, preparing youth for a digital frontier. You'll want to stick around for this one. You surely won't want to miss it. She's not alone.